Thanks for staying with us. Let's take you straight to Washington, D.C. in the United States. Of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa, the first South African president to visit the capital since 2014. And our correspondent, Simon Marks, is standing by for us. Now, Simon, the President Ramaphosa has been very busy since he arrived. He had a briefing from ministers like Naledi Pandor, who went there ahead of the time just to prepare the groundwork. He had breakfast discussions with U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris, but most importantly, President Ramaphosa had an opportunity in front of the microphones a short while ago, where he briefed a room that included well-known members of the civil rights movement, and he had quite a bit to say this afternoon, didn't he, Simon? We're just having audio problems with linking to Simon Marks. He is standing on a very busy avenue in Washington, D.C., and I do believe there's a big old truck and a construction site that has started up next to him. So let's try that again, Simon. President Ramaphosa has had his first chance in front of a microphone in the U.S. Capitol, where he addressed a room that included well-known leaders of the civil rights movement. The president not wasting any time in getting involved in some rather local politics, looking at that proposed Senate law on Russia and Africa. It doesn't seem like Simon can hear us. We'll keep trying to make that connection. We'll have some business news up next. Auditor General Tsakani Maluleke has submitted a legal opinion to Parliament. The opinion found there was no merit to claim she had acted improperly while Deputy AG. A senior employee accused her of improperly increasing the salary and approving benefits for her late predecessor, Kimi Makwetu. The legal opinion says Mlungisi Mabaso felt humiliated by remarks Maluleke made to him about his performance during a meeting earlier this year. Maluleke says she will never allow herself to be blackmailed.
Mr. Mabaso, who was the CPO, reiterated multiple times in this meeting that in his view, these transactions and decisions that I had taken were corrupt, unethical, and unprofessional. And he asserted that if they were to be made public, that would hurt my reputation. He requested that we agree on a separation with a financial settlement so that he could leave the institution. My immediate response was that I would not entertain any discussion on a financial settlement. I said to him that he should do his job in accordance with his employment contract, and that if he no longer wanted this job, he should resign. In that moment, I was very clear that I would not be intimidated, I would not be threatened, and I would not be blackmailed from holding an executive accountable for performing on his duties.
We'll bring you some more business news in just a little bit, but we want to try and reconnect with our correspondent in Washington. Simon Marks is standing by. Simon, quite a few meetings, quite a few photo opportunities that President Cyril Ramaphosa has had so far, but he did have his first opportunity in front of the microphones earlier. What did he have to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's been a very busy day for President Ramaphosa already. We are here at the White House. He will be arriving here within the next couple of hours for that all-important meeting with President Joe Biden, the first South African president to set foot in the building since 2014. But he will be coming here after having launched an absolute broadside in the speech that he made earlier at the South African embassy against the Countering Russia's Malign Activities in Africa Act. That is a piece of legislation already passed by the House of Representatives. We think about to be passed by the Senate, at which point it would move to Joe Biden's desk for signature into law. President Ramaphosa at the embassy said within the last 90 minutes or so that the law could have the unintended consequence of punishing the continent for efforts to advance development and growth. He said both the US and Russia are strategic partners for South Africa, as a sovereign country that pursues an independent foreign policy, the bill seems to punish those who hold independent views. And then he said it is disappointing that this bill has been crafted at a time when President Biden has sought to engage African countries on the basis of respect for their independence and sovereignty. So it is fresh off the back of having made that speech at the South African embassy here in Washington that President Ramaphosa will be coming here to the White House to talk to President Biden. And there is every indication that the president, the American president, will be asked by the South African leader what his intentions are towards that law if it is passed by the Senate and does reach the Oval Office desk for signature. Only yesterday, a senior administration official would not be drawn on whether President Biden will sign that law, or indeed as to whether President Biden backs the law. It's been opposed publicly by SADC and the South African government for the last several months. But now, with the real possibility of the Senate moving towards passage of that legislation, President Ramaphosa is making it a substantial issue during his visit here, and tonight he will be holding a private dinner with some of the members of the United States Senate, including the co-sponsor of the bill in the House of Representatives, in a bid to try and get them to rethink this law, which he argues, as he said in that speech today, has the potential to punish South Africa and other countries across Africa for preserving positive relations with Moscow. So amid all the discussion about refreshing the partnership between the United States and South Africa, which has been the focus really for this visit, that now is a dark cloud hanging over the potential outcome of this presidential visit to Washington, D.C.
Now, Simon, this is a little surprising because I think it was just yesterday we were talking about how, of course, this visit takes place against the backdrop of the ongoing conflict in the Ukraine and South African government's refusal to condemn Russia for their actions. It wasn't spoken of in as many words when Anthony Blinken visited here in South Africa earlier. And it seemed when this visit kicked off that it would all just be sort of on the peripheral or wouldn't be scripted, or we wouldn't see any evidence of that subject coming up in any official discussion in the various meetings being held. But these comments by President Ramaphosa has just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off, hasn't it?
Well, look, I think there's no question that this is a potential substantial problem in the relationship going forward. But it's only a potential problem because we don't know if President Biden is going to back the bill and agree to sign it. He has, of course, the capacity to veto it if he chooses. But the bill is being debated at a time when, as you know more broadly, President Biden is taking a very tough stance towards Russia, branding Vladimir Putin a war criminal, ratcheting up sanctions against Moscow. Even today here, preparing to announce billions of dollars of additional military assistance for Ukraine. Now, it's become pretty apparent over the last couple of days that the two governments have recognized in the run-up to this bilateral meeting that they're not going to agree on Ukraine. The Americans are aware that they're not going to persuade President Ramaphosa to take a tougher stance against Russia, especially, of course, given Pretoria's long-standing relationship with Russia that, of course, dates back to the time when the ANC had an embassy in the Soviet Union and the South African government, the apartheid government, did not enjoy diplomatic representation there. So they've sort of agreed to hear one another out and take on board each other's views in order to clear the brush, to focus this broader meeting on issues including trade and investment, public health, infrastructure partnerships. And in the first meeting that he had today with Vice President Kamala Harris, she welcomed him to breakfast at the Vice President's residence here in Washington, D.C. South African officials say that on the agenda was climate change, seeking solutions to enhance the just energy transition in South Africa, continuing to build the resilience of health systems against pandemics, continuing to build the resilience of local potential vaccine production and committing to cooperation in space exploration with a focus on supporting local industries. There was also an affirmation of the partnership between the United States and South Africa in support of peace and security in the SADC region. So there's been plenty of broader issues on the agenda, but Ukraine, national security, and now clearly this proposed legislation up on Capitol Hill, I think is going to be a critical piece of the conversation that takes place there in the West Wing of the White House behind me in just a couple of hours' time.
And you've got ringside seats. Thank you so much. Our correspondent in Washington, D.C., Simon Marks, bringing us the very latest from what's just become a very, very interesting visit by President Cyril Ramaphosa.